Hi, so welcome to this webinar on Active Directory snapshots. And this actually is a pretty cool technology that not many people are actually taking advantage of. So I just wanted to cover really what the Active Directory snapshots give us, and then how we can actually use them and the best scenarios. And when we actually start playing around with the technology, we'll actually see that it's doing some very cool stuff and giving us access to a lot of very useful information that may very much change how we do our Active Directory management, especially around backup and recovery. And as that little animation there just really showed, all the idea is that we can actually take point-in-time copies of our Active Directory and access it in real time without having to reboot, stuff like that. So that's the standard blurb about me, John Saville. This is what I want to cover. So current backup and restore technologies. How are we doing things today? How have we had to do them? Then we'll actually look at what are the basics around Active Directory snapshots. What does it give us? And then let's actually just use them. Really, for this technology, it's just something you want to see and use. There's not a huge amount of complex theory that we care about. So really, we just want to get into how do we use them. So we'll see accessing the data in a snapshot, and then some of the more common use scenarios. So really with today, we need, obviously our Active Directory is critical. Now there's always big discussions around, do I need to back up Active Directory? Active Directory is a multi-master technology. I always have more than one domain controller. So every bit of information I have in one domain controller is on at least one other. So I don't really need backups from a perspective of if a server fails. If a server dies, chances are I wouldn't restore the backup anyway. A lot of the times you would actually, if it was FSMO role holders, you may seize those to another domain controller. Then you just rebuild the server and promote it. But what if I delete a lot of objects? If there's some logical corruption, maybe a program ran and changed a ton of attributes. Today I can do tombstone reanimation. So if there is a deleted object, I can reanimate that tombstone to bring that object back to life, and it keeps it SID and its GUID, but it loses most of its attributes. It loses all of its linked value attributes like group memberships, and really there's no way to find out what that information was. And as we actually see, snapshots is a good solution for that. But so we still need backups. If we do need to restore a lot of objects, there is some deletion. Multi-master replication would replicate that delete and is not a solution. So we do need backup still. And the way we do that is there is a VSS writer as part of Active Directory. And I wrote NTFS, it's NTDS. As we can see, if I look at the writers, we'll actually see there's an NTDS VSS writer. And so our backup applications can do a system state backup and actually call the NTDS VSS writer to make sure the information on disk is in a consistent state, so we can back up that NTDS DIP file, the logs, etc. And that's a good backup of the AD. But to actually view that backup, so there's been a deletion, I've lost an object and I want to bring it back. Well, maybe I don't know exactly which backup it was in. So to actually look at the backups, I have to boot a domain controller into Directory Services Restore mode, restore the backup, then I can look at it, I can mark objects as authoritative and restore them. Now obviously in 2008 we do have the restartable AD, but that's not actually really supported to stop the AD service and restore backups. Although people do it, and as long as you reboot straight away it's generally okay, it's not a supported operation. So this is very, very intrusive. To look at a backup, I have to boot into this special mode, load that backup, which could take a while, and then I can actually do restorations. So what was actually introduced with Windows Server 2008 was this ability to perform Active Directory snapshots. And it's utilizing VSS at the back end, the volume shadow copy service. And essentially what it's letting us do is to take point-in-time copies of the Active Directory. And again, it is using VSS, which means that the back end, when it's storing this information, it's using that copy on write approach that VSS uses primarily, which is to say when I take a snapshot of the Active Directory, it takes a look at all the files it cares about and says, okay, watch those blocks on disk that contain those files. And then when someone tries to overwrite one of those blocks, it does a copy on write. So as someone tries to write to that block to change it, it says, no, I need the content of that block because that was at my point in time. So it copies the data from that block into its own area and then lets that write proceed, which means it only has to store the information that's changing. It doesn't do a complete copy of the entire Active Directory. It only has to copy data as it tries to be changed. And that's what the Active Directory snapshot is. It just enables us to take point-in-time copies of the Active Directory. So you may be thinking, well, that's what a backup is. When I take a backup, it's taking a point-in-time copy of the system state, which includes the Active Directory. And in a way, that's very, very true. What this actually is giving us is the methodologies on how we can use these snapshots. So it always comes up, so do I even need to backup anymore? So remember, these snapshots are using VSS. So it needs to make sure the data on disk is consistent, so it is using that NTDS VSS writer. And it does back up the information relevant, so it's not just the ntds.dit, it's the log information, even the system disk, the registry. And if we start delving into history a little bit, we understand, well, why did they even do this? So it's a cool feature, as we'll see from a usability standpoint. But originally when Longhorn was in beta, so Windows Server 2008, the backup application they provided in box did not do a system state backup. So it didn't cover Active Directory backups. And so the AD team were basically like, okay, we want to provide this enhanced functionality anyway. So this is how we can say we can do backups of the Active Directory information through these snapshots. Now, as it happens, the in-box backup application after Beta 3 got the hint and actually put in system state backup technologies, but it still doesn't match what we can do with this technology, with the Active Directory snapshots. Do we still need to do backups then? Well, the AD snapshots we perform cannot be used when we do directory services restore mode restorations. Now, when I say they can't be used, it's not supported. Whether or not it would actually work is a different matter. It's honestly not something I've personally tried. If you look at the snapshot content, it's pretty much all there. But Microsoft do not support that restoration from an AD snapshot. So the answer essentially is, for that real disaster scenario, if we do need to do a restoration, we still need to do normal backups as well of the Active Directory. AD snapshots do not replace traditional backups. So to actually create a snapshot, we actually do it via the NTDS util, which obviously we use for many of the more advanced Active Directory functions. And we basically just go into NTDS util, we go into the snapshot action. We have to activate our instance to actually point to the NT Directory services. Obviously now we can also Active Directory, lightweight directory services, etc. And then all we do is we say create, and that will create a new snapshot. And as we see, it gives us a GUID for that snapshot that it created. And then if we do a list, we'll actually see, hey, there's that snapshot that it just gave us. And as part of that snapshot, it backed up the C drive. Because in this instance, the C drive contains the registry, the ntds.dit, and the logs. So everything it needs for that AD snapshot, everything to capture the state of AD, is on this one system drive. And I just wanted to drill down. So why do we have two entries when we list the snapshots? So as I said, the first one is the main snapshot that covers all of the volumes that are covered in the snapshot.